Ken is really strategic now. He ended up tricking that motherfucker Ui into thinking it was something that it wasn't. Because at the end of the day, Ken Kaneki right now, he's so savage and still keeping that intellect intact. It's like he's not just a mindless, powerful ass motherfucker like a typical cliche thing that you've seen in many different stories. He's a savage now, but a smart and strategic savage. And I'm loving it. Now, the beginning of this chapter, ultimately, for starters, seeing that basically Ken Kaneki tricked this motherfucker Ui. Like, you gotta think to yourself, okay, I'm so happy that this transformation of who Ken Kaneki is. I mean, for starters, after the spoiler video, I'm so glad that we ultimately got to see that this is indeed Ken Kaneki, but not the Ken Kaneki that we know and love, not the innocent, sweet little guy. This is a savage with intellect intact. That is fucking awesome. I mean, he tricked Ui into thinking it was something that it wasn't, and then ultimately Ui, like the impression that was left right there, because remember, Ui was at, I think at one given point, involved with Arima. I think that was a part of, you know, the squad or whatever, so he had Ui looking at it like, you did that by yourself. And I mean, right there, that speaks volumes. Like, because everybody, whenever there's a big, you know, one-eyed owl thing, or, you know, the one-eyed king going around and shit like that, it takes armies and shit to take this motherfucker down. And the shock, you did this by yourself, you fended him off, you did it. Yeah, Ken Kaneki definitely got them rights, and I think the way it worked out was so perfect because it helped to build up his rep and his stature in the CCG. And if you really look closely at it, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of it was strategic in the sense of what he did with Kane, aka Karren, as well as Shu, because there was a moment in the chapter where Ken looks at Kane before throwing Shu off the fucking building, and I think he calculated everything precisely. At the end of the day, he was looking at it like, I know this motherfucker is going to try and save him. So what he did was, for starters, he betted on it. He was being a very risky man with it, but ultimately he was like, I know that this motherfucker cares so much about Shu that if I throw Shu overboard, he's going to jump and try and save him. So what he was doing was getting rid of a thorn in his side, because Kane did a lot of fucked up things, and now that he's thinking so clearly, is like, I know you. I know what you about, son. So it's like, gets rid of a thorn in his side, gives one last final farewell gift to his one-time comrade, Shu Tsukiyama. It's like, okay, you know, we were comrades at one given point. I don't really give a fuck anymore because I'm on my selfish shit now, but I'm going to give you one final way, like a gift, basically. Like, okay, you're going to be able to survive from this because I'm going to throw you overboard, and I know that motherfucker loves you so much, she's going to jump over and save you. So it's kind of like him being strategic, because at the same time, you got to think, this is off a building. He has Ui right there, so it's like, oh, if I throw this motherfucker off a building, Ui's gonna see that I'm not caring about this ghoul. It's not that, like, you know, I'm trying to save him or whatever. He did it in a real strategic manner, and it just shows what Ken Kaneki has transformed into now. Taking a quick look and analysis on who Ken Kaneki was from the beginning to now, if you start off with the very first version of him, the black-haired one that didn't remember anything of his childhood abuse from his mother or anything like that, he was selfless. He was selfless and timid. Then he transformed into white-haired Ken Kaneki, which was ultimately like a martyr. Even throughout the eradication and all the craziness, he ultimately was a martyr for his ultimate goal of, like, you know, protecting everybody. Like, even if I gotta sacrifice, even if I have to become this monster, so to speak, I'm gonna do it for them. And whatever happens to me, fine, fuck it. But I saved them. Then we had the confused, lost, wandering soul that he was with Sasuke Heist, and that was still like a mixture of black-haired with not really the savage of white-haired, but he would go in when he needed to protect people. So we had that, which, to be honest with you, I would arguably say Sasuke Heist is the weakest version, because granted, not necessarily power-wise, by the way, Sasuke Heist isn't as timid as Black-haired was, because Black-haired Ken Kaneki, that was before he really had the experience of the Ghoul world and all that tragedy, but ultimately, he was still not on that level of what white-haired was. And I know a lot of us were salivating at the fact of, one day, please let the white-haired Ken Kaneki come back. But what he transformed into now, it was from selfless to martyr to confused and lost to selfish. That's what I think is what we have right now. This is the Ken Kaneki that said basically, I want what I want. I don't give a fuck. My mother beat me for wanting shit. No, that doesn't matter no more. I'm not going to be a martyr for nobody no more. I'm not going to be confused anymore. I'm going to be selfish with still my goals in mind. Now, you got to argue, where does he reside at this given point as far as the spectrum of the things that are going on? Does he still really care about the ghouls? If he saw Toka, would he say, bitch, your breath stink, get the fuck out? Like, what the fuck is this Ken Kaneki gonna do? This, you know, red fucking blood in his hair and all sorts of shit. Like, what is he gonna do at this point? Is he to the point of like, I don't care about anything but myself. All I'm gonna do is save my own hide. Fuck everybody else. Like, I'm looking forward to seeing what he has transformed into, because this chapter spoke volumes about his character. And I gotta talk about the final moments between Karren and Shu. Absolutely beautiful. It was like a play or something like that. It was just amazing, beautifully done play, so to speak, with them dropping and finally Shu saying her name and everything, and her being able to live how she wanted during her moments of death. It kind of sucks how cold the world is nowadays, that unfortunately with everything with society and politics, of how Karren couldn't be herself because of her family and how everything was set up with the Tsukiyama family and whatnot, but at the very least she got to live who she wanted to be, even if it was just in those final moments before her death. And honestly, that's a true testament to how Sui Ishida writes, and that tragedy at the end of the day is the overall theme. But even in the small smidgets of that giant tragedy, can people find a glimpse of happiness? And it sucks that it had to end that way, but it did. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Shu's next move is going to be. Is he going to immediately run after this? Is he going to go to Aogiri? Where does he go from here when he lost his entire family? He lost his ride or die bitch right there. Like, Kane is the type of motherfucker that would have done anything. And it's so crazy to see how it went out. So I'm looking forward to seeing where Shu's character goes from here. It's definitely a setup for a lost, wandering vagabond. He can't go to that vegetable state anymore, because I felt as though he sat in that for so long, wondering what happened to his fortissimo friend and meal and everything, Ken Kaneki. So it's like, where do you go from here? Ken basically was like, farewell, with that savage look. He was so savage. I loved it. Just looking at him, farewell, motherfucker. So there's no more of that. So where does his character go from here when he's pretty much all alone? I don't want to see Shu go to Aogiri. It just doesn't seem like that's his kind of cloth that he's cut from. So I'm really curious what's going to happen with him. Will we see a long distance of no Tsukiyama in the manga? And that final scene with Uri and Sasaki, or Ken now, shall I say, Ken Kaneki, like, oh my gosh, this was again a true testament to Ken Kaneki's character now. No longer Sasaki Heist, the lost state, the confused state. He is now a selfish asshole that looks at it from a different angle. He pretty much almost traded roles to a certain degree with Uri. Now Uri is more like Sasaki, and now Sasaki, aka Ken now, is more like what Uri used to be. Heartless, you're weak, and that's why he wasn't able to get it done. So it's like the shoes reversed now, and the lines that he said in this chapter. Is this my fault now? Curse your own weakness? Like, oh my gosh. It's like, I think because he still has all the memories, I think now at this point, because it's just like a combination of everything, and it just turned into this animal asshole savage, he still can possibly mourn to a certain degree Shirazu, but at the same time he's looking at it from his own viewpoint of like not really giving too much of a fuck, just because he's like, you were weak and you died, fuck it. And we got progression now, the associate special class Sasaki Heist. Well, again, Ken Kaneki, I gotta keep saying that, baby, I gotta keep saying that. So we got advancement with that, and the fact that he did that by himself was why I'm glad that it was just like, no, we're not gonna wait for the season or whatever, it's just gonna be now. And you can see how much of a fuck he really gives. The fact that he wanted to be relieved of his duties as leader of the Qs and everything, like, just everything is about to switch for Tokyo Ghoul right now. Like, this is no longer Sasaki Heist, he's not gonna be with his little buddies from the Quinkes anymore. Like, just so many things are changing, and I love the direction that the manga's taking right now. Like, in case you haven't realized what I've been saying this entire time, this was an outstanding and amazing chapter. The progression, we had multiple deaths. I mean, this whole entire fucking arc, Uri's character development, and now how it's going to be basically Uri looking at him like, you're a piece of shit, and you made me who I am right now. I'm a better person, but now you're a fuckface. And Uri taking over as leader of the Qs, like, I could definitely see Mutsuki and them still having a soft spot for who he used to be, but they're going to quickly realize that this isn't Sasan anymore. This is Ken Kaneki the Savage, and honestly, amazing chapter. 11 out of 10 for this bad boy. Sick as fuck, and I love the transformation of Ken Kaneki. Couple questions though. For starters, what's gonna happen with Shirazu's body? Are they gonna make a Quinky out of him? Also, who's gonna get his nuts? Yeah, I know. I love the joke though. Fuck it. And where's Shu gonna go from here? Ken, are we gonna get a little hiatus of seeing him constantly, and then we're gonna eventually see him again? Similar to how like Tokyo Ghoul took a little hiatus of seeing him constantly. And the Qs, are they gonna just look at Sasuke in a different perspective now? Is Arima gonna catch on? So many different things, and I can't wait to see how this evolves. Like, this was the pivotal changing point in Tokyo Ghoul right now, and I'm loving it. It's not white-haired anymore. It's not him either. It's not black-haired. It's not Sasuke. This is a whole new monster. But thanks for watching. If you enjoyed anything about this video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want more from me, make sure to subscribe. I'm World, and as always, people, have an awesome day. Tokyo Ghoul for the motherfucking win, baby. I love this series. Oh yeah.